Hello and welcome to Crafting a Revolution, the podcast. My name is Katie Freeman and I'm one of your hosts. Every week we bring you interviews with makers of all kinds who identify as either female or non-binary, and they can come from all over the world. Today's guest is Annie Evelyn, who I'm going to call, she's a furniture maker, but I'm going to call her a furniture artist. And she says that her medium is chairs, and I believe that to be correct, because she takes chairs in all kinds of different directions. It's been, Annie and I have been trying to connect for a while now, so it was really great to get a chance to chat with her. I will say we had our interview when I had a kiddo homesick with COVID, so there were a few interruptions. I do believe I caught all of them in the editing, but if something sounds weird, just chalk it up to there was a kid in the background screaming for something. Okay, so before we hop into the interview with Annie, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the patrons over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Lee at Lee Runyon, Annette 513 Woodworks, Katie Thompson, Women of Woodworking, Kevin, Lefty's Woodshop, Christy, Twisted Twine, Jeremy Speece, Sammy, Go Sammy Lee, Rachel, Moody Makes, Bonnie, Toolmom Bonnie, toolmomstore.com, Laura, Oakley Soap Company, Brandy, Studio Obey, Lee, The Rainbow Carver, Ellen, Little Bear Furniture, and Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you all so very much for your continued ongoing support, helping to support the podcast on a monthly basis. If you would like to support the podcast on a monthly basis, like if you're listening to the podcast and you're like, this is pretty rad, I would like to help support it and keep it going, you can do that by heading on over to patreon.com/crafting revolution. If you listen to the podcast and think it's rad, and want to support it in a monetary way, but not on a monthly basis, you can follow along with the podcast on Instagram at Crafting a Revolution and hit the link in the bio over there. And there's a way to do just the one-time donation. It says like one-time donation. So if you're really, really loving the podcast, want to support it, but not necessarily an ongoing way, we have made sure that that is possible now. And as always, you can support in a non-monetary way just by sharing about the podcast, especially on Instagram, telling your friends about it, sharing about your favorite artist or maker that you've heard on the podcast. All of that brings more eyeballs to us, and trust me, it helps. The more downloads we get, the easier it is to get sponsorship from brands, and all of that stuff helps tremendously. One more thing before getting into the interview with Annie, so just stick with me here. And that is Katie Freeman, will be at Workbench Con next week, which Workbench Con it starts Thursday afternoon, the 24th, and it goes through Saturday, the 26th. So if you are going to Workbench Con and you're a listener of the podcast, make sure you come over and say hi, because I have podcast stickers right now that I ordered just for the conference. So come on over, say hi, and I'll give you a sticker. And I also may have some leftover t-shirts that I'll be bringing with me. I need to sort out what's left to ship out. But if I have any leftover shirts, I'll have those there with me too, that you can purchase, again, which will help go towards the podcast and help the podcast. So I think that's it for the announcements. Let's go ahead and head on into the interview with Annie Evelyn. So, Annie, I like to start by asking my guests to introduce themselves. Would you do that for me?
Yes, my name is Annie Evelyn, and I'm a furniture maker, and I live between Bakersville, North Carolina, where I have a studio, shared studio in Spruce Pine, which is nearby, with a group of other makers called Trees. And we just became an LLC and bought our building together, and there's going to be great things to come from that. We're hoping to have artist residencies and community spaces and stuff there. And then the other half of my time is spent in Cookeville, Tennessee, or Smithville, Tennessee, at the Appalachian Center for Craft, which is the satellite satellite craft campus for Tennessee Tech University.
Okay.
I'm the wood assistant professor.
Okay. And what's the distance between those two places?
I know that very well. 4 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm not going there every weekend or anything.
Yeah. Okay, so before we kind of dive into all the great things you do now, I want to take a step back and ask, a broader question of like, what is the story of Annie from like itty bitty baby Annie? Like, where did you kind of grow up, and how did you get to where you're at now?
Okay. I grew up on St. Simon's Island, Georgia, which is a little barrier island on the southeast coast. And I knew I was going to be a fashion designer. And well, first I knew I was going to be a singer. Then I knew I was going to be a stand-up comedian. And then I knew I was going to be a fashion designer. And at 18, I went to Providence to the Rhode School of Design. And I signed up for fashion. And then I went to one meeting, and the woman who led the department at the time was this British woman. She said, at RISD, we don't call it fashion, we call it apparel. And I was like, oh, these aren't my people. And I switched to furniture. And what she was actually saying was, at RISD, we make real clothes and not just but I was too dumb to understand that. So I just totally laughed. I actually agree with what she was saying, but it was too stupid to know. And I knew that furniture was my second choice because my grandparents had owned a furniture company. And so I grew up surrounded by that. So I knew it was a thing, but I had never done any kind of woodworking or anything like that. So it was a weird, maybe jump, but
When you say they owned a furniture, when you say they owned a furniture business, were they making furniture or kind of
they were not.
Okay.
They were not. They were in the company was based out of Massachusetts. They were Jewish immigrants to the area, and they had showrooms in Boston, New York, and Los Angeles, and the furniture was manufactured in New Hampshire by craftspeople. They were business people. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I grew up with my grandmother showing me how to clean it and lovingly care for it. And it was the most important thing in our house. We didn't have art really, it was just this furniture was the most beloved, cared for thing. And I think that's when I went to art school and was going to make something, it just felt natural to make the thing that I had grown up revering.
Mm-hmm. You're not the first person I've had on that started in fashion and moved to furniture.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I say that woman said that, and then I bailed, but also the lifestyle. I just, I think I had before I got to school, I imagined myself on a country road, making high couture, and it's just oh, that's actually not the lifestyle you get to have. And when you're a fashion designer, but as a furniture maker, you can have that lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I was an undergrad, this person said, I can't remember who said it, but somebody was I'm just at art school for the lifestyle. But I'm always reminded how much that's true. It's I didn't want the lifestyle of that craft. I wanted the lifestyle of that craft. So that was more important.
Right. Absolutely. So once you guys started into the furniture program, I guess, I have not gone to RISD, so I don't know the answer to this. Is it all focused on woodworking or
no?
Okay.
Yeah, the furniture program there is you learn mostly wood. It's mostly wood focused, but you take metal and upholstery and mixed media casting and all kinds of other vacuum forming stuff like that. Now I went there. I was actually in the first undergraduate class that graduated. They had a grad program before, but not an undergrad. but now they didn't have all this then, but now they have lots of technology and all that stuff there too.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear back. I applied for grad school at my local university, University of Iowa, for the 3D design program, which is like furniture design. And so yeah, there's a
Cool.
lot of like technology I've used before. There's CNC and stuff like that, but things like vacuum forming, I'm super intrigued about learning about and how to integrate that. So yeah, I imagine RISDs has grown as well,
Yeah.
especially like CNCs and all that fun
Mhm.
stuff. What drew
Yeah.
you to the wood side of that, with being able to learn all those different skills?
Well, it's funny, but in undergrad, I actually was not doing much wood at all. I was, I was not good at it. So, I would come in with something and it would look like shit. And then, my classmates, these dudes would have what I call splooge fest joinery, and it would like all be perfect and like everything had and I was just like, okay, this isn't for me. And I just like backed off, and I was really good at welding. So, my undergrad was all metal and upholstered furniture. It wasn't until I like became more confident as a human being in my adult life that I was like, no, I can freaking do wood. I can, it's like I can do anything I try to do. And like shockingly, when I had the confidence and went back to do it, I could still hear John Dunnigan and Alphonse Mattia teaching, what they taught me in my head. So it was like there, but I just hadn't believed in myself enough to like keep at it, to try. I was just like, I did a bad job, I'm out.
Well, after your undergraduate, did you go straight into a master's, or what'd you do right after undergraduate?
No, so when I was in undergrad, in the summers, I worked for a local upholsterer, because we had upholstery, but like not by anybody that really knew what they were doing. And he was a used car salesman, an auto mechanic, and a car and boat upholsterer. And so I learned from him, and I worked a couple of different jobs. Like I worked at a sandwich shop, and I drank alcohol like it was a full-time job. And I worked at a nuclear submarine factory, and I worked at a couple of other upholstery places, and then kind of went back to the guy that I learned from and was like, hey, what's up? And he's like, do you want to do business as my business? And I'll step away from the upholstery. And I ended up doing that. And that kind of like brought me back on track from my like ne'er-do-well time. And and then I did that for a couple of years, and then was like, oh, I didn't mean to be doing upholstery for other people for the rest. Like this, where's my, like, I missed the art. Like, I think I had gotten tired of doing art after school. I was like worn out. It takes a lot out of you, and needed some time off. But then like eventually I was just like, oh, I need this to feed my soul. And so then at that point, I used grad school as a way to get back into it. And
okay.
And I went to Rhode Island School of Design again. It's because I lived in town and was married and owned a house at the time to someone who had a job, and it's like moving wasn't really an option.
Right. Yeah. And so did you get your MFA then?
I did, in the same department.
Okay. So where does, I guess, getting into, so the MFA kind of helped get you back on track of making your own art. Where does it take you from there?
From there, it took me to, so sometimes the grad students at RISD call it the Rhode Island School of Divorce. So it took me there. It was like a really dramatic time. My stepfather, who raised me since I was 4 and was kind of like, he gave me unconditional love, like in a way that my dad, like whatever. He was my dad, the person that raised me, and died. And then my real dad died. And then I got divorced. It was kind of like this like really tumultuous time in grad school. And then I which I will say was like really terrible, but also really, really good for my work because I was just like had all these feelings to express.
All these raw emotions going on. Yes.
Just like channeling into my thesis. So I did my thesis on humor to deal with it. I was just like so sad that I mean, humor is always my way of dealing with pain. So I, made a gigantic heart-shaped whoopee cushion that said "Love Stinks," and I made a piece that was completely designed by asking the magic 8-ball yes or no questions. Like, I just was like, if it was the more absurd, the better. And so that was great. And then after grad school, I got divorced and moved to New York. And I didn't really know what I thought I would go back to Providence. I just was kind of like, let me get out of town and go see what this New York thing's about for a minute. Mm-hmm. Ended up working for a yacht or doing boat upholstery there to make money. I mean, nothing in upholstery has been the cornerstone of my of financially supporting making, giant farting furniture or other ridiculous things that no one will buy. Even if they don't look ridiculous, they don't get bought very often. So, upholstery has been like a chargeable skill that has allowed me to kind of do whatever I want. I like to have that. I mean, there's just, I'm going off topic. So
no, you're fine. You're good.
Okay. I just feel like, there's not one way to make a living in this. And often it takes many ways to scrape by, but some of us can kind of productize our craft and sell their own work like that. And that's like what feels good to them. And some of us, like myself, I just needed those things to be separate. Like, I'm making money for this. In fact, I didn't put fabric in my work until I started, being able to support myself in from grants and work and stuff like that. I never put it in. It was just like, work, that's work.
Yeah.
I do that really separate.
I think it's, I mean, yes, I think maybe I'm one of those people who was naive, even though I had several people tell me that it's very hard to make a living making furniture. I had several people tell me that, but I'm like, dang it, I'm going to make it happen. And I still have not made it happen, but it is, I think there's something to be said, like you said, the skill set of upholstery, you can, bring in an income doing that. And to me, it's even though it's work, it's still making. And I look at it in, right now I'm working on getting my shop set up so that it's I can do some smaller production work that's not going to be super creative for me. And it's not, it's not what I'm
bread and butter.
Yeah. It's not going to be what I jump out of bed and super excited to do. But I know I'll still enjoy it more than the other work that's been paying the bills. So
I also think I should clarify something. When I say I couldn't put fabric back into my work until I was making a living on my work, those were temporary time. So I was doing the residency at Penland and I got a grant. So that was a block of time where I wasn't. And then or I did a Windgate residency, which is paid 4 months hunks of time. So these were hunks of time. Right. And then I would go run a residency program for pay for 4 months at a time. So it's not I have never, ever, and still don't because I'm a full-time faculty member, made a living from just selling work on a consistent basis.
Right.
There have been hunks of time. I just wanted to clarify that because I just realized that it made it sound like now I'm just sitting over here and other things selling and I just, that's not the case, But I think that it's this is something I tell students a lot. It's is that really your goal? Why is it your goal? like, that's how you make money and make a life. This is your art. They don't have to be, it doesn't have to be one thing. Like,
Right.
you find something you like doing and keep it separate if you want. Like, there's, I think we put this like weird pressure on doing that. And it's like, we don't have to.
Right. And the reality is like, that's why it's like, I only take commission work if it's like work that's in line with what I enjoy making, if that makes sense. I'm not, I've done, I mean, of course, I've done work where it's like someone, you know, hires me to make a specific, very specific thing for them just because I have that skill set. But it only took a very small handful of those jobs to go, nope, I'm not doing that, because that's going to take the joy for me out of making. Hey makers, today's episode is sponsored in part by toolmomstore.com. At toolmomstore.com, you can find any and all tool-based merchandise for all genders, all sizes. They've got mugs, they've got shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. I have one of the shirts myself that has the hashtag woodwork her on it. And I also have a couple of the mugs that define what and who is a tool chick. So super excited with the merchandise that I have. I know that you will be satisfied as well. And also great discount for those of you who listen to the podcast. At checkout, if you enter the code MAKERMOM, you will get a 20% discount off any of the merchandise that you buy. So that's just toolmomstore.com. All right, let's head back into the action. Yes, I think it is important to note that sometimes you're not going to get paid for your work. And if you want to get paid for your work, like you said, like, why is that your goal? I know several people have said that once they started getting paid for their work, it took like the joy out of it, because then it became a job. And it wasn't like their art anymore. It was like, oh, I have to get this, and this done to get paid. But yeah, I think all of us, if you're an artist, you are doing multiple things to make money. And that's the reality of it. But I think the important piece to me is always like, I want to feel like I have control over what I'm choosing to build, how I'm choosing to build this fabric of making a living, and like what things I'm doing. As long as it's my choice, I feel like, I don't know, in a better position than like just punching a clock somewhere.
Yeah. And I think being responsive and listening to yourself, like, I mean, making art is all about getting to know yourself and figuring out who you are. And it's like, it'll probably tell you what you should be doing, you know, like if you can figure out how to listen to it.
So with your, you know, art pieces now, like I've seen, because I, you know, follow you on social media, like getting your work into shows. Is that, I guess maybe that's more of the question. What is your goal for creating art? To satisfy, you know, something within yourself, or do you hope like to be able to share that, you know, a certain experience or whatever with others?
I mean, the overarching goal of my work is to make people happy. That's like, I found an old artist statement from when I was in undergraduate, and it said like, blah, 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 metal, blah, 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 upholstery, blah, 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 furniture. And then at the bottom, like separated from it, it was like, but mostly I just want to make people happy with the things that I make. And I found it when I was in grad school, kind of like writing more artist statements. And my stepfather had just died, and I had just made, so I should say, I went back to grad school, and I had planned, because I'd owned this upholstery business, and I had planned to make easily manufacturable upholstered furniture, because I was like working with upholstery, and I was like thinking about a lot. And I was just like, you know, modern upholstery, this is like in, you know, the very early 2000s when I had that business. And I was like, oh, you know, they're making modern upholstery, like isn't as efficient, like, you know. Anyway, I had that in my mind. And then my stepfather died, and I made this. He was like a prankster, and he always kept like a fake rubber roach in his pocket, or like would honk the horn when you like walked by the car. And so I made him this memorial fountain that had it was like cement and like a beaten copper top that I made. And then I put a secret fountain that was remote controlled. So if like people were mourning, you could like press this button and they would get sprayed in the face with water. And I just had so much fun. And I was just like, and everyone was laughing, and I was going through all this pain, and I just was like, I want more of that. I have to have more of that. And then I found that artist statement, and I was like, oh, I don't have to make easily manufactured upholstered furniture. Like I can devote my life now to like making people happy and like having fun and laughing. And so that kind of became, my mantra. And I was just like, I can do this. And, I try to keep that with me. I think the other side of it is that, for the day-to-day making, so that like might be an overarching, but like what I'm trying to get is you make one piece and it answers the first question you ask and plants another question in your mind, and then you make that next piece and you are like following a thread. And like when I can capture onto a thread and go that, it's like, I have goosebumps just thinking about it, because that's like when I feel like an artist, when I feel like I'm succeeding, like I'm like, I'll just like be on a roll with body work, and then all of a sudden like the threads at the end and you're like, I'm kind of feeling a little bit like that right now, like lost. And like I just said to my partner the other day, like I got to write another artist statement, because I'm feeling so lost. Like I'm like it's like you'll be happy like creating more pieces like in the same vein of what you're making, but there's like, I need the like the what is the question, why, it's like I lost a sense of like what question I'm answering. I'm just answering the question, I'm just like answering the same question, and it needs like more nuance, or I don't know. But I think that's it's like when the design is just designing at that point, it's like, I think my personal opinion is that all makers and artists and craftspeople or whatever are all makers, or are all artists, craftsmen, and designers. And it's like just at different stages and at different amounts. So it's like, I need the like artist in me to like come up with what I'm doing, the craftsman in me to make it, and the designer to figure out like how it gets, what it looks like. And then the maker for the craft person to actually make it.
That's interesting. So you're like, when you're making your work, you're answering a question, that thread. And I have found, I don't think I've been able to pinpoint like when I'm really making, and when I make pieces that I'm just super proud of, like what it is about that specific process. I know I struggle when it's like design XYZ. I have a really hard time with coming at it from that angle. Like, partially that's maybe a little bit of the undertone of like why I want to go into my MFA program, that I applied for, because I'm hoping to get a little bit of that. Like, okay, if I wanted to set out to, I don't know, design a whole living room like set, like, can I take it from that angle? And so far I can't. Like it stops.
But you're such a physical maker, it's like you're like, I would still say that you're doing all the same things, but in a different like way. Like you're responding in time to a piece of wood and like making those decisions on a fly. And it's like the art is like, maybe for you, like when you catch the glimpse of that, side of that piece of wood, and you're like, hey, let me put on my music and right away. And that's like, but, and it's like, that's what I say. It's like for everybody, it's like at different levels, it's like somebody might be this much designer and this much artist, or, this much craft person, like,
it's just really interesting. Yeah, because I'll get random idea. It's usually either in the shower or driving. Those are like my two places that like I get.
Mine's the bathtub.
Okay, I just get hit by like, oh, that would be so cool. Like, and it might just be a shape that I can kind of like extrude out in my head to like what I would want something to be. Or it is a lot of times I have so many pieces of wood at my house. It's not even funny, but, and a lot of times it's like that might sit there for 5 years until I figure out what that specific thing is supposed to be.
Yeah. Until you walk by one day and it's like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's like, if you gave me a piece of wood and told me to do something with it, like I have to, like just the way I am, like I have to start with an idea. Like recently I participated in this show with the Center for Art and Wood, the croquet mallet show. And, I'm a chair maker, as you can probably tell since you follow my Instagram. And, Victoria reached out and was like, will you be in this show? And I was just like, you're sitting at your computer. And I was just like, I don't know what that means for me, but let's try it, right. Like I'm just like, and making that croquet mallet was like the hardest thing for me to like, I couldn't, it's like, where do you start with an idea that is going to end in a like particular object? Right. I mean, I sometimes will say that like chairs is a medium for me, like because it doesn't necessarily matter. So it's just like, if you told me to like come up with an idea in a chair, it's like, it doesn't matter to me that it knows it's going to be a chair, but like a croquet mallet, so.
Just couldn't wrap. Yeah.
It was hard. I struggled.
I get
Only
it.
the deadline
totally
made that thing happen. So it's just like, and even then it was rush shipped.
Yeah. I totally get it. I'm wondering if like listening to like so many other like podcasts and just like seeing people's social media feeds and stuff lately and trying to put a finger on this feeling for myself of like, I'm wondering if where you're feeling lost is part of this collective. I feel like we all this year are feeling very lost, very tired, very like, I'm not even sure I can like actually do the thing of get out of bed, like do all the responsible things today. Do you feel like maybe that's part of it for you, of this collective just?
I mean, I think that very well could be. I also know that this happened to me many times with no good excuse. So I think it's like, I think it's just ebbs and flows. It's like you'll get on a groove and find it, and then just the thread just naturally ends, and you have to kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Readjust, like recalibrate. That's the word I'm looking for. Recalibrate. And like, and the other thing is that like, I mean, I use the phrase like you're answering a question, but it's like, to me, my work has like helped me figure out who I am. Like, if you knew me, it's given me like the first, like that in my grad school experience, I made a piece that was these coin-operated vibrating tables that break everything on top of them. So you put 25 cents in, and I got all these tchotchkes on there, and they fall and they break. At the end of the first time I showed those, people were like standing around cheering them, like it was like a boxing match, and they were like putting the broken tchotchkes back up on there. And I was like, I need this. Like, I need to create more experiences where people are as excited about furniture as they are right now. And that like led me down a path of event planning that like I have, now taught college classes on throwing parties, because it's just like, and I was never, doing that kind of thing before. It was like the reaction to my furniture that made me like, oh, I gotta make that again. And that led to a collaboration called Table Fights that we put on for 5 years in New York, where people made robotic fighting tables. And, then it led to just, non-furniture based collaborations with artists in New Orleans and New York, and, just parties, basically art parties, but
I mean, I get the like the reaction piece, because I have figured out like one of my favorite reactions people have with my work is where they're like really zoning in on it and going, oh, it's wood. Like, not,
you get like addicted to that. You're like,
and that's what I'm, like when I've done my my wood bowls and I do the spin art and put resin on it, like my intent is for like at, not super far away, but at a distance, you think that that's a ceramic piece or a piece of glass, and that it takes like deep, like, really investigation to go, oh my God, it's wood. Like, I just love that. And I, when I sit there and it's like trying to stop the grin coming across my face of like almost a mischievous type thing of like, I gotcha. Like, you didn't expect that. And it's the same thing when I like dye a piece of wood, like maybe on, it's a little bit more recognizable as wood when it's just dyed, but it's still that like, oh my, like just not expecting it. So yes, I totally get that being addicted to that reaction. It definitely pushes me to be like, okay, how crazy can I get with this piece of work? Push the limit. So I do want to pivot a little bit, because I don't want to miss talking about crafting the future when I get a chance to, and shine a light on that a bit. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about the founding of that, like where that came from and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I was a resident at Penland School of Craft in around 2015, 2016. I was there from 2014 to 2017, but around, I think, 2015, Corey Pemberton moved to the area and we became friends. And we went to Mardi Gras one year, and we always like would get into conversations and complain about the lack of racial and ethnic diversity and bitch and moan and just be like, everybody's doing a bad job. Why isn't everybody fixing this, without doing anything ourselves? Just bitching. And when we went to Mardi Gras and we were like up really late, having a really great time, and this, our regular ranting was on hyper mode, and we were just like, oh, wait, we're going to do something, like, big epiphany, like we're going to start something, what, and we decided we would call it Black Craft. And then we woke up the next morning and Googled that and figured out it's like actually already a whole witchcraft thing that we came up with a different name later. We didn't really know what it was going to be, but we were just like, we need to take diversification into our own hands. Like at this point, like it's not, it's not working. Like the institution, collegiate institutions and craft institutions and, adult education are kind of all being like, well, we're not getting applicants, and so that we kind of, came to going back to high school age students, where there are a lot of people already working with diverse communities and, BIPOC communities already out there doing that. So we just were like, let's create pathways for people to go from there, where there are already groups of artists working, and like help them go to Penland. And, that was our first try. And we collaborated with, our first youth arts partner was this awesome place in New Orleans called Yaya. young artists, young aspirations. And I was living in New Orleans at the time, managing a residency program with this place called Court 13 Arts. And I went over and met them and was just like, hey, how would you guys feel about sending some kids to Penland? They were like, sure. They knew of Penland because one of their teaching artists had experiences there. And then I was teaching concentration at Penland that spring, and we gathered up like a group of like-minded artists, and we had a Kickstarter, and we sent 2 students. We were actually just trying to raise money to send 1, and we raised enough money to send 2, so that was really exciting. And then we were really planning on growing very slowly because none of us had really any nonprofit experience, and I had seen people start nonprofits and kind of get in over their heads by like incorporating right away and doing all this stuff, and I was just like, okay, we're going to go really slow. And then kind of the summer of racial awakening happened in the country, and with Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, and the country woke up in a real crazy, insane, just like, oh, well, what's going on? And they were like, oh, here's this group that's already been doing something, let's get them, and like, then, everybody started spreading the word, and we went from 50 members to 1,500 members in like 3 months, and from $2,000 to like 50,000, like 200,000, it was just wild. And everybody was having auctions and raffles and posting, and it blew up. And it was Corey and I were like, oh, let's learn how to, okay, well, so much for going slow, now right. We are okay, we'll just kind of hold on and went for the ride. And we actually just this maybe like 4 or 5 months ago now, have our first paid employee, because everybody else has been volunteering, but this wonderful human, Leah Spriggs, who has nonprofit experience and knows what they're doing, and is just the most incredible human.
I think I saw that announcement on social media. So
they're amazing, and they are really helping us get our shit together. And all the work that they have put into the organization just makes me I can't believe we made it through last year without them, and just don't even know how that happened. But it's go. We went from 2 students. Then there was COVID summer, and we did some stuff then that we had like some grants and some Zoom classes and stuff that we did for our partners. And then last summer we did 30 students, so 2 to COVID to 30. And this year we're doing 60 students. So, I mean,
that's amazing. And I've seen like you guys are doing you're doing some classes, like specific classes, bringing artists in. Like I saw, I think a glass blowing one.
Yeah. So that is Corey and Cedric, Corey Pemberton and Cedric Mitchell. Maybe also 2019, but maybe very early, actually Black History Month, 2020. So like early 2020, they founded a thing called Better Together, which is a glass blowing event that features, I say this a little jokingly, all 7 of the Black glass blowers in the United States of America, but it's almost true. There are like several, maybe 1 or 2 others that, couldn't participate or didn't participate, but, that's pretty much it. So it's like, when we think it's bad in our field, And at first they were like, oh, it's really bad in glass. I'm like, oh, no, it's really bad in wood. And then I was like, oh, wait, this is everybody? Okay, you guys got this. Like, this is really, really bad. So that's awesome. And they're, showing young Black artists that, here's some people that look like you and you can do this too. And then that also promoting Black entrepreneurs. And so they'll have free booth space for sales and like DJs, and it's just really fun. The first one was in LA, and then this most recent one was at Yaya, and there's plans for more. And so I just will say that also, and I'm involved in the like raising money and the logistics of getting the students to and where, but then Corey, the director, has also created all these other amazing opportunities for artists who are not artists who are already doing their thing in the field. So like he started a residency program at the Crafting the Future headquarters in LA. So we have 2 residents at a time in this space that gives a stipend and free studio space, and also a free class at one of the craft schools. And then also he, has put together like a bunch of curatorial opportunities. Like he collaborated with Intersect through Crafting the Future to do things, and has just started all kinds of programming that has been awesome. It's been amazing. He's incredible. Yeah.
I mean, to speak just kind of briefly back on like the whole glass part, like I think that those words will forever stick with me. I was watching like the most recent season of Blown Away on Netflix, and there was a Black glassmaker as one of the participants in the show, and he said, I came here to show people that Black hands can make beautiful things. And like that just, I don't know. It gutted me actually. To think like, well, of course they make beautiful things. Like, and the fact that needs to be said is, I don't know, like I'm getting teary now. So it's just like one of those things that I appreciate.
Yes, and
that you guys are, I guess, addressing and making strides towards changing.
And though I have not seen Blown Away, I believe that's Jason McDonald, and he is one of the 7.
Okay.
Better Together events. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting how powerful, just little lines like that can be. I mean, Crafting the Future, like the reason that Corey and I started having these conversations is, he has his own reasons, obviously, as a Black man, very different from mine as a white woman. But for me, it was after the Charleston shooting massacre, and I was listening to the radio show On Point in my studio, and just bawling my eyes out at the horrible racism and inequality. And this woman came on the radio, and she was like, look around, and if you don't see any Black people, that's a problem, and you need to work to fix it. And that was like, I mean, that statement was just like, I think as white people, we're just like, we don't know what to do. We feel we're one person, like we feel helpless. Like, I can't fix this. What do? I don't know. I mean, and I would say that actually, not just as white people, I think everybody feels that way for all the problems in the world. It's just like, how do we make it better? And it wasn't until like just somebody explicitly said, like, you need to do something, that I was like, took ownership of the problem. And I think, that's what we're trying to do with Crafting the Future, is give everybody a way to come together without having to necessarily, found a whole nonprofit about it. And like, it's like, we can do stuff,
Yeah.
There are steps we can take.
I think, along that same vein, the podcast is, 3.5 years old, and I've always made it a point. I had talked with somebody else who had a podcast, and she said something in kind of passing about like, it's important to her to notice, like, if she's had too many white guests in a row. And that kind of stuck with me. And so, I'm like, yes, that's something I also agree with, and kind of making sure. So it's always been part of the, I guess, mission of the podcast. But I would say like it wasn't until kind of 2020 and George Floyd, and like just I knew all those things existed before, but it was like I really cannot, like there's no more escaping for anybody, and feeling like just kind of lost of like, well, what can I do? And realizing like I do have a platform. It may be small, but I have a platform that, I can share. And it was like that whole like share the mic kind of I don't know what you want to call it, event that happened. And so like now, it's one of those things of like I intentionally seek out as many BIPOC people as I can find, on social media. I reach out to as many.
Have you
as
checked
I
out the network page on CTF?
No.
we have well, I'll just do a little plug here.
Yeah.
You can we have the network page, and there's I guess list, but I mean it's like little icons, and you can find artists in all mediums, people of color.
Well, thank you. Now I'll go there.
And there's also, because I know you do all media.
Yeah.
There's also the Color Network and Black Artist Designers Guild, probably seen them. And
I also follow like the Black Guild, I think is what they're called on Instagram. I'll have to. Yes.
Black Artist Designers Guild. Yeah.
So I'll go there. I'll definitely check out your resource page. Because that will help me the hours of searching
and that
I do.
And these things of like these resource pages are opening up, because it's like, when everyone's like, how do we fix this? It's like, these are the problems that people quote, like, oh, well, I don't know, I don't know where to find them. And it's like, okay, so that's like where people are coming in and filling the need. And like, there's some ways for you to get to people. I also have some people that that I will in the wood world or whatever that I'll.
Yeah. I mean, some of it for me can be like, I can find Black artists. I have an easier time finding Black male artists, or those who identify as male, and finding, artists, BIPOC artists that identify as female or non-binary can get a little trickier sometimes.
We'll just do one. You got to get N.E. Brown on here. They do wood burning, and have been getting into woodworking and painting, and went to Iowa.
Oh, then yes, I do.
And Tyler.
Okay. Do you, it's grown so much. Do you feel like you're seeing it affect some change at the higher places of higher education and craft schools and such?
I don't know particularly. Okay, well, I will just say that I'm looking at the long game. And if I tried to, suss out whether or not we're having like, the kind of impact we're having immediately, it can get depressing. So I tried to just be like, we're working towards a goal, that isn't going to be reached probably in my lifetime. And, but even if you have a positive effect, on a few people, it'll have been worth it. And, but I do see, I mean, these institutions are definitely, you know, working to make real systematic changes. I don't know. I'm kind of I would say realist, but maybe you could say negative Nelly and just be like, I mean, from the get-go, I've been like, people are paying attention right now, but they're not going to next year. You know, like this is going to be over. Like we need to, you know, like just know that people are fickle and self-centered and, you know, all the things that make up humanity, you know, the good and the bad and the ugly, you know, and we all do it for different things, you know. But I do think, you know, there's some changes being made to like the way you apply to things, the way they judge things. I mean, one of the things I love about Crafting the Future is that there's no, well, I guess there's a little bit of gatekeeping but not by us. And the gatekeepers are the people that are working with the students. So, you know, they're selecting their students based on whatever criteria makes sense to them. So like, that's the difference between like a CPF scholarship and a scholarship through the school. Like that is still being selected by whoever is at that school, and you don't know who that is, you know, but this is being selected by people who are in the community students are coming from, who know these students and are like, maybe it's not like, you know, maybe it is the best maker, but maybe it's like somebody who will benefit the most or could, you know, whatever that criteria is, we don't get involved in that. And I love that part, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that there's more stuff like that happening, you know, as we all get more educated on and I'm sure we're making mistakes, everybody, you know, Crafting the Future in organizations, and, you know, we'll find out what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all human beings. And I wish we had like so much more time to talk, because like gatekeeping I'm especially passionate about. Like I'm even passionate about, to the point of, is it always appropriate that the knowledge remains so deeply held by a place of higher education? Like, how can we disseminate that knowledge so that, you know, more people can be successful? And then the idea too of like sussing out whether the people who get the CFT scholarships, like, are they going into spaces that are safe?
And we talk a lot about that. And kind of like, you know, work to kind of prepare people. But I, you know, it's something that I've heard you mention on, you know, other episodes, and I think, you know, that is the DIY being the, you know, level, like helping level that playing field. And I completely agree with that. And I also think it's like, you know, as a teacher, you know, I'm teaching at a college level to people who are majoring in this mostly, but, you know, even for them, like, it's almost more important to me, like I'm teaching them skills and they're getting those skills and they're having a great opportunity with that. But it's almost more important that they learn the passion for making, and the like, there's like, you can pick up a skill to do a particular thing at any point in time, you know? And once it's like, you have to have that drive, the desire and the confidence or whatever. And so it's like, you know, I'm teaching that as much as I am teaching how to, you know, cut joinery or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I'm teaching it, but this is a lifelong thing. You don't just hop out of school and be good at stuff.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think DIY can be leveling to a degree. I still think, I think that field is predominantly currently white women. And I would like to see it, you know, be opened racially much more so. Because I've had guests on who have flat out said, like, who were women of color, who were like, you know, it took me a long time digging on social media to see if this is even something like that I quote unquote should be doing or could be doing, you know, as a woman of color. And that says a lot too, because it is about representation, right? We all need to see ourselves out there in order to feel confident and comfortable in what we're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe I'll have you on again to talk more about that stuff.
Well, I was thinking, you know, you could have, maybe you could have Leah on for Crafting the Future.
Oh, yes.
And they can talk all
yes.
about it.
Okay. Well, so we are at the end of our time together, and I want to make sure I give you a chance to let people know all the varied ways they can like see your work and see what you're up to.
Yeah, AnnieEvelyn.com is my web page. Crafting_the_future is the Instagram handle for Crafting Future. Our webpage is craftingthefuture.org. And we have sliding scale memberships. Memberships are start at $25, but then, you know, you give what you can on a sliding scale. And that's for 1 year of membership. And that puts you on a mailing list and, you know, give you a good feeling. And
I'll add to that plug that I am a member. So people should go sign up to be a member.
Yes. And then my personal my furniture Instagram is Annie Evelyn _furniture.
Right. Well, she says with the question mark.
Pretty sure.
Yes.
And yeah, that's all I got.
Okay.
This was very fun. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for being on and being a guest.
Okay.
All right, so again, that was Annie Evelyn, furniture maker, furniture artist, and I will include the links on how you can follow along with her in addition to the project of Crafting the Future. I'll include the links for all of that in the show notes for today's episode. Best places to find those show notes is first check the description for the episode in your podcast app. If you're watching this on my Freeman Furnishings YouTube channel, you can check the description box down below for those links. And lastly, you can head on over to freemanfurnishings.com/podcast and find this episode as well as all the past episodes there and check out all the goodness. All right. So make sure you follow along with the podcast again on Instagram at Crafting a Revolution. There's all kinds of links there in the bio, ones making it easy to be able to head on over and watch an episode or listen to an episode, as well as easy ways to support the podcast. And while you're there, check out my business stuff, Freeman Furnishings. You can find me shop dancing and power carving and making furniture, home decor, and art. And also check out my co-host, Katie Thompson. You can find her over at Women of Woodworking and check out that project there. She also has her monthly online journal, which is Pen and Chisel. So please also check that out and say hi to her. She will be coming shortly this month with an episode. And we have a new episode coming up Friday this week. So in the meantime, as always, let's go craft a revolution.